Israel has been mentioned in 93 documents in the 2025 release of the JFK files. This video goes over the most important documents related to Israel in the new files. So, before I start off, this is how I went about my findings. I was able to find code online using GitHub that actually did image to text extraction of all of the JFK files from the 2025 release. From there, I was able to use DocFetcher to pull specific keywords related to Israel, the Israeli Mossad, Israeli prime ministers at the time, about 30 different keywords where I was able to pull out the documents. So I'm going to go through the most important findings with you guys. For general background, what you guys have to understand and what makes the Israel connection in the John F. Kennedy assassination so interesting is this gentleman right over here. This is James Jesus Angleton. He was the CIA chief of counterintelligence during JFK's administration, and he had an unusually close and odd relationship with Israel. A very odd relationship that many would state is a conflict of interest. Here are just some of the newly released JFK files. This one was previously released, and more information was revealed in it. This is called the Israeli account, and this specific document sheds light on just how close James Jesus Angleton's relationship with Israel exactly was. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So James Jesus Angleton is an American, of course, but his relationship with Israel was very interesting. U.S. security concerns date back to the very beginning. During that time, to the very beginning of the CIA's relationship with Israel for almost 25 years, that relationship came under the aegis of James Jesus Angleton, the agency's legendary chief of counterintelligence from the late 1940s to 1974. What you have to understand is this man, James Jesus Angleton, he wasn't Jewish, but he had such a close relationship with Israel because during his 20s, he was actually helping Jewish refugees escape from Europe and immigrate to Palestine during the Holocaust. So he had a very close and personal relationship with Jewish people, and this heavily affected his actions and the work that he did at the CIA. While John F. Kennedy, and this is one of the most shocking things about James Jesus Angleton, while John F. Kennedy was negotiating with Israel's Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion and Levi Eshkol to stop the development of nuclear weapons, James Jesus Angleton was working with the Israeli Mossad, aiding them and abetting them in their nuclear weapon development. So this article mainly gives you insight into just how close James Jesus Angleton's relationship was with Israel. Within the huge bureaucracy, Angleton was the quintessential independent operator whose blend of charm and forcefulness won him great respect and power. In late 1951, Angleton established a formal liaison with Israeli intelligence and set up the Israeli account within the counterintelligence staff. He was motivated in part, sources say, by the belief that the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, could provide a rich load of information about Soviet operations. So initially, Angleton handled the Israeli account personally in Washington. His Israeli counterpart, then a minister of the Israeli embassy, was enormously close to him. And what you need to understand is during the CIA at the time, all the folders for the different countries were operated in the open. There wasn't a specific country that had their folder hidden among the rest. But Angleton felt very strongly that Israel should be specifically over his oversight and very secretive. And once Angleton took hold of the Israeli account within the CIA, nobody else saw it. He was very, very close to it. And the only people that worked under him that saw it felt like he took a very odd, obsessive approach with Israel that nobody else in the CIA took. So the Israeli account quickly became a separate forbidden territory to those who did not work on it at the CIA. This may not have always been so. One former CIA officer tells a story of the early days of the account. For a time, this man says, the work of the staff handling Israeli operations was out in the open, just like that involving any other country. One day, however, staff members arrived at CIA headquarters to find their files, their desks, and everything else had vanished, and that they were transferred to other sections. Only later did they learn, according to the story, that Angleton had taken over. This guy goes into the CIA. He has this counterintelligence special forces operation going on. So basically, he has his own operation going on within the CIA. He decides to take the Israeli account within the CIA and put it under his oversight, completely excluding previous individuals who've worked on the Israeli account. And now it's really just him. overseeing this account with full dedication. The CIA's clandestine services, which carries over espionage and other covert operations, consists of separate staff, of which the counterintelligence staff is one, which is his staff that he oversees, and a collection of geographical derivations. Each country within the CIA has an interest and a separate desk. Each desk is set to be handled and handle its own country and account. Under Angleton, the Near East Division of the CIA's clandestine services has a desk handling each country except Israel. Israel was in effect Angleton's special domain inside the agency and thus normally a part of his counterintelligence staff. There was no direct contact between CIA officers handling Israel and others responsible for Mideast countries, a situation later fed suspicion that Angleton treated Israel favorably. So this is giving you some context now on just how close this Angleton dude within the CIA was to Israel. It's very odd. There's a whole CIA department, and when you think of the CIA, you know, CIA has this magical view of it. Everybody thinks it's this very secretive organization, which it is. But even within the CIA, there are more secretive departments. Not everybody has the same level of security clearance that others do within the CIA. And it's in its very early years, very early on during JFK's administration, especially, Israel became a whole separate folder within the CIA, even prior to JFK's administration, but during JFK's administration especially. The CIA chief of counterintelligence took on a very, very personal role with the Israeli Mossad beyond what JFK could even see. JFK actually, in one of the JFK files, which I don't have pulled up, it's not directly related to Israel, but it's John F. Kennedy receiving a report from somebody giving a report on how he feels about the CIA and that the CIA is beginning to have overreach, a governmental overreach, and that they need to be overseen more. And JFK was particularly concerned about the independence that the CIA was beginning to develop. Well, within that independence, the Israeli account especially had basically it was an entirely separate appendage. So that's the first document I want to show you, and that just gives you a little bit of brief. And then here's another document. Mossad CIA ties, legacy of Casey and Angleton. Now, this one is also really interesting, and it just shows you how odd this James Jesus Angleton guy was when it came to Israel. Israeli intelligence officials are mourning the deaths in recent weeks of Central Intelligence Agency Director William Casey and James Jesus Angleton, the legendary chief of counterintelligence at the CIA. Both men were great friends of Israel. Mr. Angleton, who died of cancer on May 11th at age 69, and I'm going to show you a really interesting document regarding, or a really interesting article regarding the ceremony that Israel held for James Jesus Angleton, and they actually have a stone memorial for him in Israel till today. He almost single-handedly ran the Israeli account at the CIA until 1974, when he was forced out by a new CIA director, William Colby. During his many years on the job, Mr. Angleton was instrumental in dramatically strengthening U.S.-Israeli intelligence cooperation in a host of areas. His legacy continues despite the very serious setback during the Jonathan J. Pollard spy scandal. So this just goes to show how odd it is. The new CIA director comes in, and this Angleton dude is having a very weird obsession with Israel. The new CIA director is like, okay, clearly there is some sort of conflict of interest going on here. And he kicks him out of it. Angleton was kicked out of the CIA's Israeli account because the new CIA director that came in was worried about just how close this guy was to Israel. So this is not just a few individuals within the CIA beginning to notice that Angleton had a obsessive relationship with Israel. It led to Angleton getting basically fired from his position with this account because of how close he was. It led to a conflict of interest. Mr. Angleton's counterparts at the Mossad, Israel's external intelligence service, were deeply disappointed when Mr. Angleton retired and suspected that Mr. Angleton's extraordinarily close relationship to the Mossad was one reason Mr. Colby wanted him out. They just say it directly, straight up. But even after retiring, Mr. Angleton retained his personal ties to some of Israel's best intelligence agents. They often visited him at his suburban Virginia home and dined with him at local Chinese restaurants. So now we're really beginning to understand it's way beyond this dude just seeing intelligence operations. He's now also hanging out with Mossad officers in his free time. They're basically like buddies. So Clearly, huge conflict of interest here. And I'm just going to go over it a bit more. Mr. Casey in the 80s, and Mr. Angleton in the 50s, 60s, and 70s would often travel there to meet the head of the Mossad to exchange information to plan covert operations. 50s, 60s, 70s, so 70s. So even prior to John F. Kennedy being president, Angleton was already had this obsessive relationship with the Israeli Mossad. You guys have to understand, I mean, the guy was helping Jewish refugees escape Europe and go to Palestine even before Israel was a country. So the level of dedication this man has to Zionism, uh, a mayor of an Israeli city during James Angleton's memorial in Israel said he was the biggest Zionist of the lot. That's how dedicated to Zionism Mr. Angleton was. Mr. Angleton, in fact, had a very dramatic impact on his counterparts in Israel in persuading them to take the necessary precautions to make certain that the Soviet Union could not penetrate the Israeli intelligence community. He was also always suspicious of Soviet operations, yada, yada, yada. And let me just see what else here, what else in this document I really wanted to share with you guys very quickly. There is no doubt that the kind of very close U.S.-Israeli intelligence cooperation set in motion in mindset in Washington that resulted in the Iran arms affair. That's going to be a whole different. That's going to be a whole different video I have to make with you guys. So this is really everything I wanted to take out from this document and share with you guys. So let's go on to the next document that I want to show you. So here's another document that I got. Again, this is from the newly released JFK files, only the 2025 release. So I'll have to show you guys I'll go through, I'll make different videos on other releases. And this document was written in 1975. And this is a memorandum. And it basically, again, talks about Israeli intelligence and their relationship to Angleton. So, synopsis. The purpose of this memorandum is to summarize information in the FBI files concerning Israeli intelligence collection capabilities in the United States. James Angleton, former chief of counterintelligence operations, Central Intelligence Agency, advised the FBI in 1975 that he appeared before the Senate Select Committee, and in response to questions, advised the Senate Select Committee that he only had secondhand and fragmentary information concerning Israeli capabilities to conduct intelligence in the United States. So basically, which is BS, the guy was in cahoots with Israel, and I'll show you guys documents also proving that. He was asked questions by the Senate Select Committee, and I actually have all of the questions he was asked. I have the entire transcript of his questions with the Senate Select Committee. That is actually a new document. So in prior JFK releases, the Senate Select Committee dialogue with James Angleton was released, but large portions of it, of course, only related to Israel's nuclear weapon development were redacted. So you see a huge document, hundreds of pages, questioning Angleton. The main redactions in the entire document were related to Israel's nuclear weapons, and in the new release JFK files, those redactions were removed. So again, just goes to show how our government especially was very particularly exclusive when it came to public knowledge of Israel. So that's really everything that's important for this. And again, this it talks again the Israeli intelligence service representatives involving the exchange of extremely sensitive information. Currently, the FBI has no pending investigations involving Israeli intelligence collection capabilities in the United States. So that's really it from this. What you'll notice is anytime there's discussion of Israeli intelligence gathering, Angleton's name is always there in the JFK files. Always. This dude, the counterintelligence chief of the CIA and Israel, were one and the same, basically. There are photos actually that Angleton's even taken with Israeli Mossad officers. Let me pull one up for you guys, just so you guys can see how close this dude was to the Israeli Mossad. I mean, he would even do damn photos with them like they were his best friends. Let's see. I believe it's this one right over here. Let me go ahead. Look, the Jewish National Syndicate website is actually sharing this photo. There's James Angleton. James Angleton photo by the Israeli Intelligence Heritage and Commemoration Center. This is from the Jewish National Syndicate website. JNS is proud to partner with the Embassy of Israel in Washington to celebrate 70 years of the greatest American contributors to the U.S.-Israel relationship in the 70 days leading up to the State of Israel's 70th anniversary. This is how close. I mean, the Jewish National Syndicate, I believe that's the name of the website, the JNS, has a whole page dedicated to him and him with an Israeli Mossad officer. So this is the sort of relationship this guy had with Israel. The Israelis celebrate this man. James Angleton was born in 1917 in Boise, Idaho, and served in the CIA for more than 30 years since its inception, maintaining the rank of counterintelligence chief for more than 2 decades. Angleton was widely respected in the world intelligence community. It goes on and on and on. And he's basically known. They say that Lyndon B. Johnson is known as the president that forged the U.S. Israel relationship. I would say that James Angleton is the individual in the CIA that forged the CIA-Israel relationship. James Angleton, in my eyes, is analogous to Lyndon B. Johnson as president. That's kind of how I view the sort of intimacy that they had with the foreign state of Israel. So let's go back to the documents. I just wanted to really show you this photo to basically further elaborate on their very odd and unique relationship. Here's another document that I wanted to share with you guys. I have about 15 pulled up here. Again, this one just highlights just how close their James Jesus Angleton's relationship with the Israelis was. So this document, let me fix my screen here so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. That looks better there. So this document again talks about how Angleton was overseeing the Israeli account. In such instances where the information relates to Israeli matters, it has been the practice of Israeli supervisors to clear with Angleton before disseminating information from him outside the bureau. This is how close this dude was and obsessive. Now, this is where what's so interesting, and I'm just going to get to the Senate Select Committee documents because I think those are some of the most interesting. But what's important to note here is that when it came to the Warren Commission that basically reviewed the JFK assassination, James Jesus Angleton was in charge of providing the Warren Commission with evidence related to the documents that he oversaw. So anything he wanted to hide from the Warren Commission related to Israel, he got to hide it. That was very much so how it was. Of course, there were others in the CIA that oversaw him to some degree, and it's not like he had full autonomy. But if he wanted to hide a few documents with his role, especially when it came to Israeli documents, he very much so had the ability to sneakily do that. When it comes to his loyalty to the United States or Israel, that was actually a question the Senate Select Committee asked him directly. If there was a conflict of interest between the United States and Israel, James Angleton, who would you side with? Let's go ahead and take a look at that document because this is likely one of the most shocking documents that I saw in the entire, in basically the entire file. So let's see here. I have it right over here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Sorry, there we go. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now. And this is the questioning he had when it came to Israel. Let's see. I know you guys tell me to pronounce Israel better. I'm working on it. I keep saying Israel, but that's how I do it. So you'll have to get used to it until I work on myself. I'll work on that. There it is. So, Mr. Angleton, you described the fiduciary relationship. Were there points along the way where the U.S. interests and the interests of Israel were in conflict? Just straight up asking him. Of course, this was all of this where you see this huge X. This wasn't available to public until 2025. So this is all new information. Mr. Angleton, we never got into that. Of course, you only had to read the paper every day to see that. Mr. Miller, how did they come up? You say they didn't come up at all in regards to like conflict of interest. There's always conflict of interest between countries. So he's not going to answer that. Of course they came up. There wasn't anything secretive about it. But what examples can you give? The recent visit of Rabin, I think that's a misspelling for Rabin, is a classic case. The so-called reassessment of the Middle East. The Times has better accounts of it than the agency has. Mr. Miller's, I mean, at your level, and this is where Mr. Angleton becomes very odd in his responses. Now, if you read the entire document, he has no problem going on a rant. I'm talking about 3-page rant about Russia, the Soviets, the Cubans. He will just talk his ass off about this sort of thing. But the second you start to mention Israel, he gets very defensive. And he's asking Mr. Miller, I mean, at your level, when is there a conflict of interest at your level? Mr. Angleton, I don't quite get the thrust of your question. What I am saying is that you had an unusually close relationship. Cuts him off. It was not unusual. I've had it with many chiefs of services in 80 different countries, so it is not any more unusual than a lot of others. The Frenchmen who got the code is closer to me than the Israelis are. Similar to the relationship, the dash dash means he's again cut off by Mr. Angleton. I don't like the word unusual because to me it is usual. So it seems he's pretty upset here a little bit, or at least defensive. Of course, I don't hear the exact, I don't hear him saying it, so it's hard to tell, but based on just the transcript of the conversation being cut off and then again interrupting to say, no, it's not unusual, don't say that. It's odd, right? So, Mr. Miller, delete that. If your working relationship with the Israelis where you had a conflict of US interests, again, dash dash, Mr. Angleton cuts him off, give me an example of what you regard as a conflict. So the guy's super defensive. It's odd. Now, it's odd to me because I've read the whole document. This is 112 pages. I read the whole thing. If you read the way Mr. Angleton responds to other questions, he will go on a rant. He'll be patient. He won't interrupt. Israel, immediately defensive, goes crazy. So Mr. Angleton, Mr. Miller is asking him again, can you think of any conflict of interest? Mr. Angleton responds, you're the one who's posing it. I think a lot of these things are illusions. But what you regard as a conflict, I don't think there's a conflict regarding the Soviet Union or the balance of power. I don't think there is any question in my view. Senator Mateus, may I suggest the Suez Canal as a conflict that might have posed? Again, Mr. Angleton cuts him off. Which Suez are you talking about? So again, not responding, becoming defensive, and asking for more specific details because apparently somebody asking what do you do in a situation where you have a conflict of interest with Israel is not specific enough for him. I think if you're any other U.S. official and somebody asks you what do you do when you have a conflict of interest, what do you guys, if you were a U.S. president or any other U.S. official, what would you say? You would say, well, I would put America first and I would prioritize the interests of the United States. Perfect. That's it. Great answer. That's all you need to say. But why is he not? Why is he becoming very odd? What the questioning that the Senate Select Committee was doing here is they were trying to figure out where his loyalty lie. Did he have loyalty to a foreign nation? By his responses, it's you question it more. So, again, Mr. Angleton, the U.S. government position was that we had no commitments with Israel and we have no binding treaties. We had two allies that had just fought a war with us, yada, yada, yada. The Israelis were not blamed because we didn't have any agreements with them. They had violated no agreements. And again, before I go on with this, what I want you to really notice here is this big X. This big X, everything related to Mr. Angleton mentioning Israel was crossed out until 2025. Why? Why did the government not want us to know about the counterintelligence chief's relationship with the Israelis until this year, finally? It's odd. This document, this entire 112-page document was released. It's just the crossed out pages which were hidden up until now. And everything related to Russia, no problem. All that was shown out to the public years ago. It was really when it came to Israel that the U.S. government didn't want us to see this. So that's also what I find pretty interesting here. So again, I'm just going to continue reading this because they'll still continue to question him on this sort of conflict of interest he had with the United States. So now this is a perfect just directly. That is a point at which the U.S. policy differed from the policy which was adopted by the British and French and Israel. Mr. Angleton, correct. And would a situation of that sort confront you with difficulties in your operations because Mr. Angleton cuts him off? There has always been a crisis with them. Really just trying to ignore responding to, dude, what the hell do you do when the United States and Israel have a conflict of interest? Answer it. So the senator asks him again, how do you resolve a crisis of that kind? Mr. Angleton, you don't see that fellow for a few days. What do you do so he's basically asking him, what do you do if you have a conflict with a foreign nation? Oh, you just don't talk to them for a couple of days. Okay, that's odd. It's odd. It's just weird. Mr. Miller, I see. Clearly Mr. Miller at the time was also found his responses odd. I see. Okay. I think if I heard that in person and somebody responds back saying, I see, you're just curious a bit. So your method was to deal with them on those matters. Again, Angleton cuts him off. A total neutrality of interests. Interesting. Could we turn the subject of atomic technology? Excuse me, I think for the record, we should make it clear. I think Mr. Angleton has had an interview with the staff, and he has made aware that a witness testified here under oath to certain matters that the approach that we are going to take now. And it goes on. So again, this is everything that I really wanted to share when it came to this. Now, this also goes on, and you're going to see this big X cross out. We've passed the conflict of interest point. Everything that this page and the few next pages are going to talk about is Israel's nuclear weapon development. The government crossed it out as well. They didn't want us to know until this year. Finally, did they release the documents related to Mr. Angleton, the CIA chief of counterintelligence, being questioned on what he knows about Israel's nuclear weapon development. The reason this is so shocking is because John F. Kennedy, I think that if you have to put a list of American traitors that I really think, I don't want to say just wish death or like think, death sentence, whatever. But if there are a list of traitors that really qualify at the top of the list for just destroying American democracy, I think James Jesus Angleton at the very damn top, as that I believe is one of the biggest traitors to America, the very damn top. So anyways, this goes ahead and talks about Mr. Angleton's knowledge of Israel's nuclear developments. Mr. Angleton, I want to state that to my knowledge, the Israelis themselves have never raised the question of their atomic capabilities or their atomic interests, with one or two small exceptions, which was where there had been somebody who had PG'd from the United States, where he was ever to get his visa to come back and attend some meeting. I want to make sure we haven't asked the questions enough broadly. So let me scroll down here. I believe there was a section that goes directly to nuclear technology. Okay, so this is where I was looking. So for more context, prior to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, there was this guy named Tad Schultz, and he's an American journalist, and he actually interviewed Mr. Angleton on Israel's understanding of nuclear weapons or Israel's nuclear weapons capability. And now the Senate Select Committee hearing is asking Angleton about the interview that he gave that was published out in the media, because it was a pretty shocking hit piece. So anyways, it goes on and it says here, Mr. Schwartz, at that meeting, did he raise with you the subject of the transfer of atomic technology from the CIA to Israel? Mr. Angleton responds, yes. Goes on, what did he say to you? They prefaced his remarks by stating that he was not a professional scientist, but he was a Jew, and so he was good friends with Hirsch. And it goes on, and let me just get to the point that's interesting for you guys. Here we are. This is the thing that they went back and forth on, with that it had anything to do with Angleton. The other one said yes, and it went on to where they discovered that they each had separate sources that had been instrumental in acquiring plutonium for the Israelis as a follow-up to help the Israelis on their know-how by sending Dr. Mann, a nuclear scientist, to Israel clandestinely. And they both had their stories, and they had a gentleman's agreement. Mr. Angleton was working with the Israeli Mossad, sending them technical knowledge, know-how. So separate from the actual plutonium from the United States that was sent to Israel to help them build nuclear weapons, the actual radioactive material, which is called the NUMEC affair. It's a more deep dive we'll have to do later. Mr. Angleton at the CIA was also giving them scientists, God damn it. He was sending them technical knowledge, know-how. So he was giving them secretive U.S. information on building the bomb that only that U.S. scientists had, and he would give that information to the Mossad. So it was not just giving them the radioactive material. It was helping them develop the whole damn bomb, while John F. Kennedy, at the exact same time, was fighting with David Ben-Gurion to stop them from developing nuclear weapons. While John F. Kennedy was fighting with David Ben-Gurion and Levi Eshkol, James Angleton was betraying the president, aiding them in developing nukes, sending them a damn scientist. That's what was going on in the CIA. Nobody would talk about it. So Mr. Schwartz, what did he say in response? My response to him was it was wrong. He's basically saying that the hit piece that they put out regarding Israel's nuclear technology was wrong, and Mr. Angleton didn't actually say what he said in that hit piece, is what he's telling the Senate Select Committee. So do you deny the story that atomic technology was transferred to Israel? Mr. Angleton, I said it was wrong. So the Senate Select Committee is asking him, do you deny that atomic technology has been transferred? He doesn't deny it. He says the story was wrong. Odd response. Because if it was you and you truly believe everything was a lie, you say, yes, I deny the story. It was a lie. But you say it was wrong. It just doesn't seem like the right words you would say. I think if it was any normal person, you would just give a direct answer. But as we've seen, when it comes to his loyalty, when it comes to Israel's nuclear weapons development, he doesn't give those direct answers that any normal person with allegiance to the United States would do. So it goes on. Mr. Angleton says his story was wrong. Senator Baker, let me ask you, Mr. Angleton, do you understand that you mean every material aspect of the story was wrong and incorrect? I didn't mean quite that. I was more interested in the fact that, one, he knew that I knew that Hirsch, and that Hirsch told him that his source was the man who gave the article and whether he had been set up. And it just kind of goes on. And that's really everything I want to share from this document because it's pretty long. Let me see if there's anything else here that's important regarding Israel's nuclear technology. Well, here's one thing Mr. Schwartz said. I just want to make sure in your conversation with Mr. Schultz, as opposed to your testimony here today on the merits, did you deny to Mr. Schultz that you or the agency had facilitated the transfer of atomic technology to Israel? Mr. Angleton says, I denied it. But the conversation drifted rapidly because Schultz was talking about a very great agent that he had in the agency, and he was bragging about the fact that he had more sources than Hirsch did. And then he said, do you know Australia? So now again, Mr. Angleton is drifting again. But he was directly asked, did the CIA transfer atomic technology or technical knowledge, know-how, anything related to nukes to Israel? He says he denied it. But prior to that, he says he had information of it. So this is how close Angleton was to the Mossad. So let's just kind of stop there with this document. Let me go ahead and share this document now as well. And this document that you see here, it actually talks about Jack Rubenstein, it says that they found somebody named Jack Rubenstein that went to Israel. However, after I cross-checked, another document was also later shown that this was actually a different identity. There was a different Jack Rubenstein because this one says that this Jack Rubenstein was born in 1905. Jack Ruby that shot Lee Harvey Oswald, was actually born in 1911. So this one is just an identity difference, it seems, at least from this document. So now let me go to this document here that I saved for you guys. Okay, so this one is really interesting. And it kind of, again, goes back to Angleton's secretive relationship with the Israeli account at the CIA. Basically, like I said before, the Israeli account at the CIA was out in the open. Just like every other country. Angleton immediately took the Israeli account and he decided to move the Israeli account into a separate account within the CIA that he oversaw, and it was called the Special Investigations Group of CI staff. So this is basically the umbrella within the CIA in which Angleton decided to grab the Israeli account and toss it under, and basically boot everybody else who previously had access to the Israeli account out. So that's how it went. So let me quickly zoom in here. The Special Investigations Group of CI staff. The Special Investigations Group did not exist prior to the establishment of the CI staff in early 1955, and its major functions are described in more modest than the functions described in the write-up. Here is basically the functions of the Special Investigation Group. The CI investigation and analysis of known or potential security leaks in the clandestine services organization, whether headquartered in the field, yada yada yada. So basically, this is just a very secretive group within the CIA. And what it does is it conducts research into the long-range validity of CIA operations in terms of known or potential hostile capabilities, including penetrations of agency security. And it goes on, and basically what you need to know, which is relevant to our conversation now, is that it was a more secretive, that had higher security detail section and group of individuals within the broader CIA that they decided to toss Israel under, the Israeli account under. And this is where conversations with the Israeli Mossad went back and forth with James Jesus Angleton. So very interesting, again, how Angleton decided to just toss this entire account into his own supervision here. And if I just quickly word search Israel and a contact agent in New York, in addition to the SAF, this is again just kind of talking about the relation. Yeah, nothing really here interesting else that I wanted to show you guys. So now let's just go ahead and go to the next document that I had saved here. And this document was actually written to President Kennedy. And basically, this is a secret document that was just to President Kennedy. And it just went through, apparently, at the time, the way it worked is John F. Kennedy would receive a document, I believe, every week or every day. And it would literally just go through bullet after bullet of every country that's relevant. And it would give him an update on the country when it came to what's necessary for him to know. And at the time, apparently, when John F. Kennedy was president, they were the French and the Israelis were actually working together. We have picked up further details on the surface missile system with a French firm is developing for the Israelis. So the French and the Israelis were developing missiles together. Also interesting to note that the French, I believe the French leader at the leadership at the time wasn't the biggest fan of John F. Kennedy because of John F. Kennedy's also push for Algeria's independence. Wasn't the biggest fan as well. So the French and the Israelis at the time, however, they were working together, it seems, on the development of missiles. So that's another document I wanted to share here. And this is also something, let me share this document as well. This is apparently President John F. Kennedy's meeting schedule back in 1963. So this document was on March 26th of 1963. Apparently, there was a meeting with Dean Rusk to discuss the Middle East with special reference to Israel's nuclear potential. So I wasn't able to find any documents regarding this meeting. However, I did jot it down. I'm going to tell you guys at the end of this video that I actually did reach out to the CIA today, or I sent a letter. I submitted another Freedom of Information Act request to the CIA. I'll tell you on what specifically. It sounds really fancy and stuff, but it's really not. You just fill out their online form and they'll get back to you in a month or so. So anyways, I'm going to go again to the next document here. This again talks about the special group within the CIA that James Angleton set up to oversee the Israeli account. The Special Projects Group explained the rationale behind the transfer of Israel from the Near East Division and providing it with special status by placing it directly under DDO. Additional manpower and dollar costs accompanying this change should be addressed. Really glad that you guys are seeing this document, because now what we're seeing is we're actually having somebody wonder what the hell is the point of putting Israel's account from general CIA oversight to this specific special investigations group. Somebody's asking him directly. Not only is it going to cost more money, but it's going to require more people and it's going to require a transfer of a lot of material. So again, this is just showing you it wasn't necessary, but James Angleton wanted it done. Okay, that's odd, very odd. And clearly, Mr. Colby at the CIA, when James Angleton literally got fired from his position overseeing the Israeli account in this special group that he created, was because of this close allegiance James Jesus Angleton had to the Israelis. So that's another document I wanted to share with you guys. And let's see here. I think that's really everything that I wanted to share when it came to the JFK document. So now I'm going to talk about what I did that I'm looking forward to hopefully getting documents from. So after reading all of these documents, and I read about 93 documents total from the 2025 release that had mentions to Israel, the Israeli Mossad, Israel's nuclear technology, yada, yada, yada. Read through them all today. And then from those, I pulled out, I believe these are 15 or so that I just showed you guys that I thought are pretty relevant and interesting for this conversation. However, there's a lot of open-ended questions. Now, specifically, of course, the questions are revolving this suit here. So here's my questions that I just find interesting that I'm hoping we can actually get some information on that the CIA will actually provide that aren't withheld, hopefully. What this special investigations group that the Israeli account at the CIA was placed under, what were their operations when it came to the Israelis, and what sort of conversations did Angleton have with the Israelis that were filed and saved in his oversight? There is a special investigations group. We know Angleton was kicked out because he was way too close, conflict of interest. I'm hoping that there is some relevant documents from this Israeli account during the periods of 1963 to 1964 that Angleton saw. Now, again, like I said, James Angleton was in charge of providing the Warren Commission, which was reviewing the John F. Kennedy assassination, with documents related to his assassination, which is why those that believe the Angleton angle when it came to John F. Kennedy's assassination widely speculate that Angleton purposely shoved a lot of information relating to the Russians, to the Cubans, into the Warren Commission, and purposely withheld or maybe even destroyed information that regarded the Mossad or the Israelis or Israel's nuclear ambitions. So, how likely is it that Angleton, if my hypothesis here that he was conspiring in a larger scheme to assassinate John F. Kennedy, if that hypothesis is correct, then how likely is it that he destroyed a lot of files? I would say very, very highly probable. However, I'm hoping that there's something, and I'm hoping that whatever there is, the CIA views that 62 years is enough and they'll share it. So I used the CIA's online forum today. You can request Freedom of Information Act to the National Archives, to the CIA, to the FBI. Sent it to the CIA today, very specific, really detailed. I asked them, I want all documents related to James Jesus Angleton's Special Investigations Group Israeli account between the periods of January of 1963 all the way to December of 1964. The more specific you are, the faster they get to responding. And if I find anything interesting, or if they even share anything, I'll let you guys know. It's going to take a while. For context, I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to the National Archives regarding Yitzhak Rabin's visit last year, and it took them about a month and a half to respond, and then another 2 weeks to actually photocopy the documents and send me the PDFs. With the CIA, it's going to take even longer, so I expect to receive a response back within about 20 days, and it's just a response that they acknowledge it, and they have to send it in the mail, and then from there, it could literally take like 7 months, 7 months, 12 months, 15 months, so it's not something I expect to receive anytime soon, and I might not receive anything, but I'm really interested in this, and like I told you, I'm pretty obsessed with the Angleton angle when it comes to Israel's relationship with the CIA during John F. Kennedy's administration. Now, what I also wanted to share is that James Angleton, when he passed, the Israelis were really depressed, super depressed. The Israeli Mossad, I mean, they went to dinner with this guy at Chinese restaurants. Even in the United States, whenever the Israeli Mossad would visit, they'd go out to Chinese together with him, all the way up until he passed away. So the Israelis held a special memorial for him, and I've previously shared this in videos that I've shown you guys prior, and let's look right here. So I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen one more time, and you're going to see that in Israel until today, if you go to Jerusalem, you're going to see that there is actually a memorial held for him on a stone with his name. There we go. Let me see if you guys can see my screen here. And this is a dedicated memorial for James Angleton at the CIA. Isn't that, or in Israel? Isn't that crazy? So now it gets even crazier to read about what actually was said at this ceremony for Angleton at the time. So let me quickly pull out that article. I believe it was in the Washington Post in 1982, if I'm right. So Israel Angleton Special Ceremony, I believe, is what the article headline was called. Here it is, The Secret Ceremony, the Washington Post, 1987, excuse me. So there we go. Let me go ahead and fix the thing. Oh, come on, you need a paywall. Okay, wait, let me quickly bypass this paywall for you guys. I'm pretty sure I can just put it into a paywall bypasser. And basically, while I'm pulling that up, what it said is that when the ceremony was held, like I said, the mayor in Israel stated that James Angleton helped Israel get through the most difficult periods between the U.S. and Israeli relations, of course, in the 1960s, in relation to John F. Kennedy's administration. So there we go. I got it. All right, cool. God bless paywall bypassers. Let's go ahead and share this. The Secret Ceremony, Israel's memorial to the CIA's James Angleton. The most powerful members of the Israeli intelligence establishment, past and present, came together in this clandestine conclave on a barren hillside last week to plant a tree. December 4th, 1987. The head of the pathological secretive spy agency, the Mossad, was there, as was his counterpart Shin Bet, the Israeli Internal Security Service. 5 former heads of those agencies and 3 former military intelligence chiefs were also present. Their mission to pay final tribute to a beloved member of their covert fraternity, the late CIA chief of counterintelligence, James Angleton. I need to have a sip of water to just like rant on this. This dude was so close to the Israelis, they held a memorial for him. Not only did they hold a memorial for him, they counted him, an American CIA officer, as part of their fraternity. He wasn't Jewish. He was a Christian Zionist. He was so close to the Israelis that they considered him part of their special circle. They reason this was a secret ceremony, as the Washington Post reports it, is because of the fact that it was the entire Israeli intelligence community only. All the Mossad, the Shin Bet, the Israeli Secret Service, every single aspect of Israeli intelligence you can think of held a ceremony for the CIA's chief of counterintelligence during John F. Kennedy's administration that was sending nuclear information to the Israelis while John F. Kennedy was fighting with the Prime Minister of Israel to stop the development of nuclear weapons. That's fucked up. Sorry, excuse my language. I usually don't like swearing. It's messed up. It's messed up. There's something, it's like, what the hell is going on here, guys? What's going on here? So let's just read a little bit more about this. It was a tree planting ceremony, a traditional ceremony of reverence here, took place at noon at a site about 10 miles west. Eventually, there will be hundreds of trees at the spot. How magical. Woo! So, following the planting, the group gathered again in Jerusalem behind the King David Hotel at a scenic spot from the walls of the old city that Angleton often visited on his trips here because they would always go. There was a memorial stone that I showed you guys the image of that says, "In memory of a dear friend, James Angleton," but they gave no indication who Angleton was or what he did. The ceremony symbolizes the respect and affection the Israeli intelligence community holds for Angleton, who died 8 months ago of lung cancer. Let me go ahead. This is the part that's really interesting. Although his name appears in a few history books about Israel, Angleton played a crucial role in the early years of the young Jewish state. In the early 1950s and early 1960s, when most official Washington was worried or even hostile to Israel, he helped forge the link between the Mossad and the CIA that established the basis of cooperation in intelligence gathering that exists today. Crazy. Like I said, James Angleton is the CIA chief that's analogous to what Lyndon B. Johnson is as president to Israel. This is who they were. Lyndon B. Johnson, James Angleton, probably top worst people in America's history, in my eyes, worst people. So the relationship was one of mutual aid that helped the Mossad establish a reputation as a player in the major league of intelligence. Angleton reportedly aided Israel in obtaining technical nuclear data. The Washington Post says it right out there. Angleton aided Israel in obtaining technical nuclear data. This guy is a traitor, straight up traitor. I can't emphasize this enough. The president of the United States of America was fighting with the Prime Minister of Israel to stop from developing nuclear weapons, and this dude, and the Washington Post reports it straight out, was deceiving and going against the president's orders, covertly working with a foreign nation, sending them the exact information that John F. Kennedy didn't want them to have. That is so messed up. That's so messed up. That's straight up treason. That's straight up treason. Straight up treason. And gosh, I honestly get shivers the more I think about it because it's so upsetting. It's so upsetting. And that alone requires an entire investigation alone into James Angleton's relationship with the Israelis and nuclear weapons alone, completely separate from the Warren Commission. That's so messed up. So again, the article goes on. Angleton was a friend you can trust on a personal basis, said Defense Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Guys, where did we hear the word Yitzhak Rabin? Well, in the previous video I made last week on Yitzhak Rabin secretly going to the United States and leaving Dallas the day before John F. Kennedy's administration. I previously sent Freedom of Information Act requests to the National Archives. I mentioned that a little bit ago. It was the FOIA request I sent then was on specifically this dude. I sent a request asking for information about this dude's visit because I was reading in Israeli media and his widow's memoir that he was in Dallas just hours before JFK was assassinated. This dude, he was at the time, he was the deputy chief of staff of the IDF, and he was in Dallas just the day before John F. Kennedy was assassinated. So again, he has an interesting relationship, of course, with Angleton. He was a friend you could trust on a personal basis. So now we're beginning to see Angleton's ties, not just with the Mossad, but also with heads of IDF. Of course, Yitzhak Rabin later became the prime minister of Israel, and he was also assassinated as well. But so Rabin knew Angleton from his days as Israeli army chief of staff in the mid-1960s and later as ambassador to Israel. Finally, we just get to hear it straight up. The chief of staff in the IDF in the mid-1960s. So Angleton, apparently, while Rabin came to the United States to tour military installations. You should watch that video I made. It really ties into this whole narrative here. It paints a good tapestry of what's going on. James Jesus Angleton, again, working with Rabin. How much do you want to bet? Honestly, I'm going to probably put that down in my notes later. I want to see more. I want to find if there's other documents that I could find between this guy's relationship to Rabin, because we know that Rabin spent 2 days in Dallas between November 20th to November 22nd, not working at all. He ended his trip visiting U.S. military sites early on the 20th. He had 2 days, basically just going on a damn vacation, goes to Dallas, and leaves Dallas prior to JFK's assassination out of the country just hours before. 2 days off. He should have been in California touring military installations then. He wasn't. I wonder what he was doing. And I also want to know, where the hell was James Jesus Angleton during John F. Kennedy's assassination? I'm going to also look into, and this is another thing I want to do later, is exactly all the information possible related to his relationship here with Rabin. So again, Jerusalem Mayor Teddy Kollek, who rose from his sickbed to attend the ceremony. Damn, really loved the guy. Really loved Angleton. The guy's dying, and he wants to get out of his bed just to go pay tribute to Angleton. We commemorate a great friend who saw Israel-U.S. relations through their most difficult period in the 40 years of Israel's existence. Weird. The mayor of Jerusalem is saying that Angleton helped the Israelis through the most difficult period of U.S.-Israel relationship. What period was that? Oh, you're referring to when John F. Kennedy was president? The mayor of Jerusalem thinks that was the most difficult period when JFK was president. Apparently, that's when the U.S.-Israel relationship sucked. You know why? Because John F. Kennedy was trying to stop them from developing nukes. He was fighting, John F. Kennedy was, with the zionist groups in America to force them to register as a foreign agent. And most importantly, John F. Kennedy put forward a UN resolution to allow all of the Palestinians that were displaced from their homes in 1947 to return back or receive reparations. All in all, basically the worst president you could have from Israelis' point of view. And when John F. Kennedy proposed that UN resolution, guess what? Ben-Gurion, the former prime minister of Israel at the time, stated he would fight that resolution down to the last man. That's how much he hated it. I showed this in previous videos. I bet you I still have that here. Actually, what's interesting is I still have some of the previous slide decks I showed. That right there is Yitzhak Rabin. I found this article when I went through the Israeli archives. I talked about this in a different video. This was an interview that Rabin did on November 26th in Israel, so 4 days after John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And in this interview, he says, and I was able to Google translate it, he brought above average IDF officers to Texas, to the United States to tour U.S. military installations because John F. Kennedy gave the Israelis Hawk missiles at the time. He gave the Israelis Hawk missiles because of the fact that John F. Kennedy made a deal with the Israelis. Listen, I know you guys want to build the bomb, want to build the nuke, but I don't want you guys to build the nuke. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to negotiate, and I'm going to give you guys U.S. Hawk missiles. And I'm going to give you guys these Hawk missiles, and you guys promise me that you're not going to build a nuclear bomb. And the Israelis, of course, said yes, but they didn't keep up their side of the promise. And you're going to allow U.S. American inspectors to visit Israel to check out those nuclear sites. That was the agreement. And we negotiated. John F. Kennedy negotiated, and that's what they did. So John F. Kennedy was kind enough to give the Israelis Hawk missiles. So Rabin's visit during John F. Kennedy's assassination was previously he was in Europe. He was in Europe touring European sites, and then he came to the United States to tour U.S. military installations. He brought a team with him of 4 guys toward these U.S. military sites to train on these missiles. This article, though, is saying that he brought above average, like really top echelon type people, above like super trained, well-trained IDF officers to visit these sites that didn't need to be that advanced. They didn't need to be that high level. He's saying that he brought them because he really wanted to get a good understanding of how to use these Hawk missiles. Just interesting. So that's really that. Now, I don't want to go too much on a side note, so I want to get back to this article and just pull out the last important parts. Normally, no government official sneezes in the city without a press release being issued. For the Angleton ceremonies, however, even though several prominent public figures attended two ceremonies, included Rabin, Kolick, and U.S. Ambassador Thomas Pickering, the camera-shy Mossad assisted that both events remain secret. Interesting. The camera-shy Mossad. This like the Mossad, the Israeli secret intelligence unit. They don't want people to know they're celebrating the CIA counterintelligence chief, or paying homage to his death. Weird. Now, do you guys know why they say two events? They say two events because there's two memorials. They held one in Jerusalem and they held one near the King David Hotel for Angleton. That's how close. This is how much they love the guy. Chinese restaurants, let's go. Memorial, two, of course. JFK, F him. Angleton, amazing. I guess the reasoning is that if the tree falls in the forest, no one is there to see it, and it didn't happen, said a spokesperson for Pickering, who was himself not informed of the events. Still, two Israeli reporters were tipped off and managed to evade a phalanx of plainclothes security men and police to attend. This report is based on the account of one of them, Andy Court of the Jerusalem Post, as well as details provided after the event by city officials. And then it talks about who attended this event. Of course, current heads of the Mossad and Shin Bet. Again, just for James Jesus Angleton's memorial service. So what's so interesting, Angleton's widow, a daughter and granddaughter were part of the crowd of about 60 people. Several American intelligence representatives here were also said to be present. So that's really, really everything that you guys need to see here. Let's see, what else is there that I want to talk about? Angleton was working with the Israelis again. That's really everything from that article. So there you go. Angleton was just helping the Israelis develop the bomb. The Washington Post says it. They straight up say it. Yeah, Angleton was helping develop the bomb. That's okay, though, even though he was defying the president of the United States' wishes. We put out resolution after resolution in Congress condemning this, condemning that. Not one resolution condemning James Angleton for defying President Kennedy's orders. Not one. Piss off. Give me a break. Not even one statement from a U.S. official. This isn't hearsay. This isn't tinfoil hat conspiracy. This is legit stuff. We know for a fact that we had a CIA counterintelligence officer betray the president of the United States. Not one statement from a U.S. representative. Not one statement from the government. What the hell, dude? What the hell? Not one mainstream media reporting on this. Sick. It's sick. So what I'm going to do moving forward is basically, this is kind of my to-do list, is I already sent that letter to the CIA requesting more documents. I hope they give me something. Even if I get a pile of redacted documents, that's fine by me, especially with AI now. You can do a pretty good job, filtering through things. I'm going to make another video for you guys later going through, again, this was just the 2025 release, guys. We didn't even get into the Warren Commission yet. We didn't get into the previous releases. So we're going to do that. Also interesting to note is we have to talk about Jack Ruby, full name Rubenstein. He had a very odd and interesting relationship with his identity. The guy, when he shot Lee Harvey Oswald, he said he did it to, quote, show the Jews had guts. Now, again, I want to stick to facts here, and I don't want to be hateful towards a specific group. That's not the point of this video. It's really just laying out the evidence as to my hypothesis why the Israelis had an interest in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Jack Ruby, had he punched a fellow. He was in the military. He punched a fellow military member that he felt was being anti-Semitic. Punched the guy straight to the ground. That's how nervous he was about his identity. He felt so angry towards anybody that he felt was a threat to Jewish people, or even posed a threat that wasn't even actually there, nor that existed. So that's important when you put it into the grand scheme of, okay, well, I know that the Israeli government was very, very opposed to John F. Kennedy. They thought he was a huge threat. They love Lyndon B. Johnson, knowing that, Jewish Americans at the time, not all, because actually what's interesting to note as well is that back in the 1960s, Zionism, the political ideology of Zionism, was nowhere near as entrenched within American Jewish community as it is today. Whole different thing, whole different ballgame. I mean, a lot of Jewish Americans actually resisted Zionism back then, especially. A lot of letters were sent to John F. Kennedy's administration and Lyndon B. Johnson's administration after, regarding registering AIPAC's predecessor, the American Zionist Council, as a foreign agent. A lot of American Jews supported forcing them to register because they felt that Israel doesn't represent them. Now, of course, decades later and a lot of propaganda and everything, it changes how the newer generation feels, but it wasn't always like that. So that's really interesting to note. So, probably the biggest traitor to America, James Angleton. Honestly, horrible person. Hope you guys found, over a little bit over an hour now. If you guys like this video and you guys want me to do more, also whenever I receive documents and stuff, sometimes I have to pay fees. So if you want to support me, would really appreciate some super gifts. So I can kind of do this research as a full-time job, kind of just doing it because I find it interesting. Let me know if you guys have any questions. If you have any video ideas you also want me to do, please let me know in the comments as well. 146 comments, guys. Really appreciate it. Here, let me quickly go. If you have any questions right now, just toss them in because I can't really scroll through everything, and I'll try to answer some of the important ones. I think anything else I wanted to say regarding James Angleton? No, I think that's really it. I'm going to pull up more documents actually on that interview he gave with the journalists regarding Israel's nuclear weapons development as well, because even though on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, he said that he didn't give the information he gave in the interview regarding aiding Israel in their nuclear weapons. In the interview directly, he says, yes, I did. Yes, we had information regarding that. So again, another lie. And we have him lying on oath. He lies on oath when he couldn't even answer a damn question regarding who's your allegiance with, the United States or Israel, when you have a conflict of interest. The most direct question you could probably ask somebody to determine who their loyalty lies with. So, okay, guys, I think we're going to end this video here. Thank you all so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Again, if you want to watch more of my videos, would really appreciate a thumbs up and subscribe. And again, super chats really help me be able to do these videos for you guys more often. So take care, everybody. I'm going to be doing a separate video on some news events here in a little bit tonight. So take care, and I'll see you guys in a bit.